Behind the ornate gates of Topkapi Palace, in the very heart of the empire, fates were decided. A boy is taken from his distant home. He doesn't know it yet, but one day, he'll become part of the Sultan's elite force, crafted not by blood, but by loyalty. Welcome to the story of the Janissaries. The rise of the Janissaries began in the late 14th century, under the reign of Sultan Murad I. Through a system known as the Devshirme, Christian boys from the Balkans were taken from their families, converted to Islam, and trained to become elite soldiers. These boys weren't born into privilege, they were forged into it. Their training was relentless. They awoke before dawn, performed physical drills, and studied religious and military texts. They were forbidden to marry, own property, or engage in trade, at least in the early centuries. Their loyalty was to the Sultan, and only to him. This absolute devotion made them the most trusted force in the empire. In battle, they were feared across continents. Armed with early muskets, primitive hand cannons, and early grenades, they were among the first standing armies in Europe to embrace firearms. At the Battle of Varna and Mohacs, the Janissaries didn't just fight, they shifted the tides of war. Behind the Ottoman conquests of Constantinople, Belgrade, Cairo, and Baghdad stood their disciplined ranks and thunderous volleys. Even at the Siege of Vienna in 1529, though unsuccessful, their presence terrified European forces. They weren't just soldiers, they were a symbol of Ottoman might. Their iconic tall felt hats and their band, the Mekter, became emblems of imperial power. Marching with drums and zurnas, they inspired allies and intimidated enemies. Outside the battlefield, the Janissaries held sway over politics. They became kingmakers. Their support could elevate a sultan, and their fury could end his reign. In 1622, they revolted against Sultan Osman II, executing him within the palace walls. It was a shocking moment. The sword that once protected the throne now dictated who sat upon it. Their numbers swelled. Once forbidden to have families, Janissaries gradually began to pass their status to their sons, especially after limited marriage rights were introduced in 1638. What started as a corps of converted outsiders evolved into a hereditary elite. Bribes infiltrated recruitment. Training loosened. Loyalty wavered. Despite their decline, their influence persisted. At times, they opposed reforms, revolted against modernization, and resisted change. Reformist sultans like Selim III attempted to replace them with new corps, but these efforts were crushed. The Janissaries saw themselves not just as protectors of the empire, but as the empire itself. Until, in 1826, Sultan Mahmud II made a fateful decision. In what became known as the Auspicious Incident, he declared the formation of a new army and ordered the Janissaries to stand down. They revolted, as expected. But this time, Mahmud was ready. He unleashed artillery on their barracks. The city shook. Thousands perished in the streets of Istanbul. The Janissary Corps was disbanded, violently and irreversibly. Their story is one of rise and fall, of boys taken from villages who became the heart of an empire, of loyalty so pure it became dangerous, of a force so strong, even sultans feared it. They were not merely soldiers, they were the spine of an empire. This was the story of the Janissaries.